This is an overview of how you can score your strategic risk impact using a public sector example inside of the riskscorecard.net Excel template. So first you're going to have to open up the template, and ultimately we're going to go to the Risk Elements tab. Now, when you open this up, through the previous sections, you would have already created the Risk Register elements when you're working in the Risk Register tab. And then you would have also created the strategic objectives and their weightings or priorities. And you input the strategic objectives in the Strategic Objectives tab and the strategic weightings in the Strategic Weightings tab. So this sheet that you're looking at here has been brought forward from the previously input material. Now, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at how the risks impact the strategy. And this is an important concept because obviously any risk element impacts your strategic objectives to a different level. So there's a relationship between the impact of each risk element, in this example, workplace injuries, and each strategic objective. So obviously if it had a high impact on its relationship with a 5% strategic objective, that would be less of a concern to us than a similarly high impact on an objective of 23%. So by doing a detailed analysis of risk impact by strategic objective, we get a much more accurate analysis of each risk element's impact. So let's take a look at this. What we're going to do is take a look at, say, workplace injuries. And if that risk element were to occur in the worst imaginable way, what would its impact be on the strategic objective, in this case, of excelling at serving injured workers? And then we'd use the standard risk analysis where a score of 1 means it's of minor impact up to 5 where it's catastrophic. Now, where does that come from? Well, there's a standard sort of list of this 1 to 5 score and definition, and you can download this in a separate PowerPoint slide after this presentation. But this is the standard format that we look at. So in this example, we'd give it a score of, say, 5. And if we continue down, we might have a score of 3 against Excel and compensation programs, 5, another 5, and say a 2. So now we've got a more detailed analysis. Later on, we'll explain how this is useful, because if you want to do, for example, scenario planning, you would have different weightings under the next scenario. These impacts would remain the same, and so we get a different score based on the different scenario. Now, the final step in this analysis, of course, is we have to evaluate the likelihood of this impact occurring. So again, what is the likelihood that the risk, workplace injuries, will occur in whatever the next planning period is, let's say 12 months. And again, it's a 1 to 5 scoring. In this case, 1 means rare, all the way up to 5 almost certain. And again, there's some standard definitions available that help you and your team agree on what the 1 to 5 scoring looks like. So in this case, we'll give it a score of 3. Now that's the analysis part. Let's show how it's used to communicate this risk to the board of directors and the leadership team. If you think of a standard chart where we're going to take a look at likelihood on one axis and impact on the other, we can take the score that we determined from that analysis and begin charting it. And that looks a bit like this. Obviously, the 3 is pretty straightforward. It's a likelihood of 3. We're going to chart that somewhere horizontally at the 3 line. Then to calculate the impact, it's basically the weighting times the impact. In this case, a 5% weighting times a 5% impact, plus a 10% weighting and a 3% impact, plus another 10% weighting and a 5% impact, a 23% weighting times a 5% impact, and finally plus a 5% weighting and a 2 impact. So mathematically that works out to a score of 230. So those are 230 risk element strategy points involved with this particular risk element, and we can plot that again as a vertical line on the impact analysis. And so net, we're going to be scoring that at a likelihood of 3 and an impact of 230. then we just keep repeating this process for all the other risks. And eventually we'll discover whether 230 is in the far right-hand corner of critical and we need to spend a lot of time and effort mitigating that risk, or is 230 one of the lower risks and we don't need to worry about it. Of course, we won't have that answer till we've completed the analysis of each of the other risks. So this is how it is we score the impact strategically against the prioritized strategic objectives.